Oh, there we go. That's the music I was missing last week when I had Laverne on. This is the voice of EMS, brought to you by One EMS. I am Charles McFall, and I'm joined today by the lovely and talented Jessica. Depends on which Siri you're talking to. Olaes, but Olaes is, I believe, how that's
right.
That's done. So I love how the different voices of Siri translate that last name. Call Jessica Olaes. Okay, calling Jessica Olaes. Like,
And you
no.
called me that for the longest time.
Yeah, well, yeah, because that's how Siri taught me to say things. So, Jessica and I did not. I need to actually edit this real quick. We're going to talk about motivational leadership and what that means to us. But the way we got started is I have always, well, not always, but for a long time, I've been looking to improve myself. And in EMS, you do that with continuing education and those kind of things. But I always did have motivation from religion, sometimes from faith, from motivational, inspirational speakers like Tony Robbins and those kind of things, and pulling out lessons, and left EMS for a long time and really got into that world and bettered myself, I feel like. And then when I came back to EMS, it still seemed like everybody that I talked to was more in the camp of just be tough, and we don't talk about feelings, and what is this motivational crap? Hang in there, buddy, and have the cat on the tree. And it's like, no, man, it's how you can be introspective versus looking at other people or other stimulus. Now, one of the things we talk about is mindfulness and those kind of things. And then, so when I came to Trinity and Life Care, that's where I met Jessica. And at that point, I had determined, and I still was hesitant, but I had determined I'm just going to be me. I want to say things and give life lessons and try to motivate people and get them to be better. And there's a clinic calling. You got to go take somebody in early.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
And I actually had one or two people push back on that, and they don't work for me anymore because I realized just because we can't work together doesn't make either one of us bad people. And that's one of the things we picked up on. But with Jessica, as I started talking to her in management, this and another, she would bring up Tony Robbins, and you would bring up just all kind of quotes and little videos, and this is where I learned this and that. And none of it was, here's how you be a good boss. It was all building yourself better. So what got you, Jessica? What made you okay with talking about motivation in this world, getting into it, not being afraid to put yourself out there, because so many people will mock it and tear it down?
Well, I've always been a big proponent of motivating yourself, because if you can motivate yourself, then chances are you can motivate anybody else. And as I've grown up, I'll be 29 this year, so I'm still young. But as I have grown up, I've lived a lot of life, and a lot of that has caused me to have to push myself forward, because I didn't have those external forces driving me as much as I would like to. So basically, I had to pick my own self up by my bootstraps, and so that's kind of helped me learn to be more open to hearing other people, and be open to hearing what they have to say as I've gotten older.
That is good. It definitely made communicating with you much easier. Not every motivation hits, and I've watched Tony Robbins off and on, and honestly, what you find and have been sending was the kind of stuff I was looking for from him, but a lot of the stuff I found was business related. And he even has a podcast, and I went to listen to a podcast. I'm in my car all the time, and it was just so much higher over my head. He's talking to other millionaires or entrepreneurs in this particular podcast that he was doing, the series he was doing. And I get it. I get where I can learn from. I don't know who he's talking to on the one I listened to, but like a Warren Buffett, sure, you're a billionaire. I can learn something from you.
Yeah.
But when you talk on million and billionaire level, your mind has to be ready to grasp that. And mine wasn't. So I didn't listen to the podcast. And there's different motivations. I tend to stay away from religion. But all right, hit me. What's interesting about that?
It's interesting because I got on to Tony Robbins from me and my husband doing the Dave Ramsey program. So,
Okay.
Dave Ramsey always talks about being a millionaire when you retire, so on and so forth. Well, that was uh, a sideline to Tony Robbins, who also teaches you about finances and how to be a millionaire. And, you know, him and Dave have their own different opinions on how to invest, but that's what ultimately led me to Tony Robbins. And I still listen to his finance stuff too, but I found out I connect more with his motivation.
So I didn't honestly, it makes sense, but I didn't really realize Tony Robbins did finance as well. But he's
Hmm.
a life coach,
Yep.
right? Well, I don't even know if he calls himself that. And I know that term can be odd. And honestly, because there's no regulation or guidelines to that term
Hmm.
of life coach, there's plenty of people who become counselors and life coaches. And I put on my
Hmm.
voice of counselors because I've met them, not all of them, but I've met people in that on a pendulum swing on the low end of experience and ability to
Right.
guide. And I've
Right.
met people on the high end, and it's not necessarily because of schooling or certifications. It can legitimately be because you have experience and you've learned from experience and you share it. I did Dave Ramsey as well. I think that's one of the first things we started talking about.
Hmm.
Actually, one of the first conversations we had. Now, this is one EMS and the voice of EMS. And I do try to be gentle with my guests. But sideline also, Jessica and I work together every day at Trinity and Life Care. And with my managers, I tend to push them more. So if you're watching this as a potential guest, know that we have other connections outside of this.
Yeah.
Because one of the first conversations we had and was you and Jason, and we're talking about the management. And one of the first questions you said was basically, how do I get more money? You know,
Hmm.
you're asking me to do more and this and that and other. And I explained some things and you asked it again. And I brought up Dave. I said, hey, Dave Ramsey teaches you how to manage your money. Like, oh, I know. And Dave Ramsey says, if I don't ask, I don't get. Like, dang it.
That's right.
I know
That's right.
I gotta find a new
That's
tactic
right.
with her.
And that is completely right. He says either find a way to get more or get a part-time job, which can't do.
And where the self not self motivation, which is a thing, but motivation, leadership, job skills, is that an external or an internal drive?
I think it could go either way. A lot of people they have that internal drive to learn more job skills and be, that person at the job or the company they're working for. And a lot of people are driven by the external forces, like they see somebody else doing a good job and they want to do a good job too and get that recognition and get that praise. So they're gonna be driven more by that versus making their own self feel good. So I think it's a mix. It just depends on the person, the personality, where they come from, how they grew up,
Well,
their lifestyle.
let's talk about us. Let's talk about you and me.
Yeah,
So you had a career before EMS. You've only been in EMS for what, 8 years, 9 years, 10
8
years?
years.
8 years.
Mhm.
8 years. And you just said you were 29.
Yep.
Gosh, such a
I'm
baby.
about to be 29. Yeah.
Yes. So okay, man, you're such a baby. It's so weird to think about. So at 20, you went to school,
Mhm.
and now
Yep.
you're already in management at a EMS company.
Mhm.
How do you draw that line? How'd you go from high school, marrying your sweetheart, and building a life to deciding to be EMT to that's a very short time to be driven. It's not like I'm 44, right? So I spent my 20s just going EMS, huh? And I've
Yeah.
always been a leader. I was a natural leader and
Yeah.
legend everywhere I went. Not always for the best reasons, but I wasn't driven to take over and do more. Where did that come from in you?
Well, it's like I was talking about earlier. It's a lot to do with how I grew up, and I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps with Maverick's help, obviously. And a lot of that just comes from being self-determined to not be like um, some other people and my family. I don't want to struggle. I don't want to be you know in the same place for you know 40, 50 years. doing the same thing. I want to continuously grow and continuously move up.
When did you realize that where you were when the moment hit, wherever you were right then in life, you didn't want to stay here for 30, 40, 50 years? Because it seems like, and I had this, I always had dreams and visions, but it's never beyond where I was. It was always outside of what I wanted, which is not the same as moving up or moving forward. What brought you to that realization?
Well, it was very early in life, so probably by at least age 8, I was already trying
Holy
to figure out what
crap.
I wanted to do, and because I knew I didn't want to be like this. I knew I didn't want to live the lifestyle that I was in.
You knew you didn't want to have pigtails and glasses and braids the rest of your life and play with
Yeah,
dolls. So I
yeah,
better start a Fortune 500 company. I mean, well,
yeah,
that's a huge
yeah,
jump for an 8-year-old. What?
yeah. Well, I originally wanted to be a district nurse. It was my goal in life, so I was going to college for that when I first graduated high school, and I was literally working at McDonald's. I worked night shift, so I worked 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. Then I would go home and do my homework, and then I have cross country practice at 6 a.m. and then go to school all day, have cross country practice at 4, and then be back at work at 7 p.m. So I was continuously working, didn't have any sleep, and I lasted doing that for a year, and I said, you know what, I gotta find some other way to make this work because I didn't have the family that could pay for college for me, and I didn't want debt. Even I didn't really even understand what debt was at that point, but I didn't want it because of that I was realized I was
So your microphone, your headphones are breaking up. It's crackling and whatnot. So I lost your point. You're talking about. Let me see if I can hear you. Okay.
uh, every now.
Kind of. It sounds like a really dirty record cutting you off. You know what we might have to do is grab that little microphone that you showed me, plug it in, and we'll walk you through hooking that up. Hey, this is how things go. In EMS, we got to adjust. In life, we have to adjust on the fly. Not everything's going to be perfect.
It's cracking on my end too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Sometimes signals do weird things. And just so everybody knows, Jessica actually lives in a blurry house. That's how that really is for her. It's a hard thing
Yep.
talking to her in person because it's just everything blurs out around her. It's weird that way.
I got it.
All right, so down at the bottom, you should have a settings that will let you change your audio through that microphone. This was not happening before. We spent a good 20 minutes before talking and getting set up, and everything was fine. Just how life goes sometimes. Yeah, when the Lucas device stops working, you got to do it by hand.
Right.
No, you're breaking up, crackling. So you check your setting, go to audio, and then there should be a drop down menu for you to pick the snowball.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what? You may have to disconnect and reconnect because I think it might be everything is crackling, even that microphone. Barely. No, not really. But I also don't think it was your headphones. I think it's a connection between us. So why don't you disconnect and reconnect? We'll go from there.
Leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Get out, Jessica. All right. So she's going to handle that. We'll see what happens. It'll be right back. This is what goes on. And there was definitely a day and a time when I would have just been off my game. I'd have been so upset about that happening right in the middle of a conversation or a show that I'm trying to do or those kind of things, a presentation, and it would have thrown me off and I would have raged out. And yes, I've dealt with my anger issues, but part of that motivational leadership, part of that internal change is being okay with yourself. And here it goes. Let's see what it goes. And it's
Better?
clear. Yeah, so much
Okay.
better. So, and I was saying these kind of things would have messed with me before, but not only dealing with my anger issues helped me with that, but that's part of what motivation is. It's posters don't do it. And when even somebody gives you good advice, it doesn't always help you to get motivated to change your life or to do better. We have to want to change first to be able to do that. And I did. And so, Jessica, you were talking about at 8, how you knew you didn't want debt. And it's such a crazy big, I mean, I know you clarified. No, I didn't know what debt was. You basically are saying that you knew you wanted to handle life your own way,
Right.
essentially.
I
That's,
didn't want to struggle in any way.
you're such an old soul.
Yeah, I've heard that
Are
before.
you really like 104 and just play off that you're 29?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I
'Cause
age
holy
well.
cow. I mean, that's so for everybody watching, that's not a story that most of us are going to have. Mine was maybe 28, instead of 8. And
Yeah,
after I almost ruined my marriage and type of deal. I mean, it's not true. I always had some motivation in me and different things, but you had to learn stuff. Obviously at 8, you weren't ready to tackle life. So are you saying you had a guidepost all through schooling and high school and EMT school to kind of keep you moving towards a goal?
yeah. I mean, the only goal that I had was just to not be like my mother and not be like some of my family where, you just struggle all the time. And it's not something that I ever wanted for myself or or for our family. And so I mean, that's what's always, I mean, obviously I met Maverick at 15, but that's always what has led me forward, is just to be better than my family. And I think that's what I want for
Hmm.
Logan too. Be better than us.
Yeah, that is a tough thing with kids. I've got a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and then 10 and 9. And as they're littler, smaller, they always seem to push, but in my learning and transitioning, as they were young, they pointed out the flaws in me, right? Because I get angry with them irrationally. So you're 3, up here. This is one of the major stories that told me I really had to get my crap together. And my son, firstborn son, so new baby to us, 10 months, maybe a year old, still bottle fed, still however, whatever age was, still, small diapers, bottle fed. And I had him. I was being a good dad. My wife was working or whatever she was doing that day. And I was like, I'll take him to my parents and we'll have a day out. And I did grab the diaper bag, but in my rush and my lack of paying attention to anything and not just thinking about life and changing life, right? Life had changed to a point, but for me, it wasn't okay. Let's make sure we take care of this little one all the time because I had my wife, and that was her instant change, was always looking
Hmm.
for that. So I didn't pack enough bottles, basically. I think I had a few, but not everything I needed. And I realized it almost all the way uh, to Athens. And I lived an hour and a half away from Athens at the time where my parents were. Anyway, coming back, we're almost home, and he is hungry and wet, probably, but I know, and he's just crying and crying. And I'm like, I know. What do you want me to do? I don't have a bottle. I'm a failure. And I'm like,
Yeah.
not quite crying, but I'm almost there. Like, I
Uh-huh.
know. But it worked out. And that's like, oh, okay. Later on in life, I tell that story many times. And as I tell stories, I learn different things about it. But I went, all right. That moment for me was change your perspective. You've got to look and think ahead better. You've got to prepare yourself better. And that changed me for life. Nowadays, with my same kid, 17 years old, I still feel like a failure at times. I still feel like they're better. Going back, I'm trying to figure out why I was telling the story, and it was because you said you want everybody to be better. You wanted to be better in your family. I resonate with that 100%. I wanted to do better than what they did and what I saw. Sometimes what I thought saw was wrong was me being wrong, but sometimes what I saw was wrong was a different way I could be. And that's what I think what you're talking about, being better and being different. My kids are already better than me. Not me currently, but me at that age. They don't have the trauma I had. They're not making the anger issues
Right.
or the anger decisions that I had. I want them to be better as well. And in that vein, do you find, because I think you bring that to employees, not every employee is a kid to you or your child to you. Uh, and there is obviously difference between actual children and people that you mentor or guide.
Yeah.
But I think that's where you tend to come from. Sometimes you want them to be, all of them to be better than you. And that becomes
Absolutely.
frustrating. How do you deal
Absolutely.
with
I'm
that?
looking
How do
for
you deal with
somebody to replace me. I'm looking for
So
somebody to
how do
replace me.
you teach them? How do you motivate them and deal with the frustration when it doesn't come through sometimes?
Well, the first thing is I have to take a step back and I have to really think about what could be going through their mind to make them think this way or that way. And I try to really see where they're coming from first before I react. Because sometimes my initial reaction is like, what are you doing? You know, why are you asking me this? Why are you doing this? Whatever. I want to, shake them sometimes because I'm just like, what are you doing? But then I take that step back and I look at where they could possibly be coming from. I try to understand what they're thinking. And sometimes I'll ask questions and sometimes I'll just go ahead and lead with what I think they're thinking. And I'll answer them or, you know, come to them in that way. Because a lot of times if you come at somebody with very confrontational, like all they're going to do is put their defense up. They're not going to listen. They're just going to shut down. Their ears are going to be closed. I want people, when I talk to them, I want them to have their ears open and listen, because I've had to do that. I've had to listen to other people. And when they come at me, trying to fuss at me, that doesn't work well with me. Come with me with understanding and patience and grace. I'll listen to you all day.
So the frustration, I was asking how you dealt with the frustration, and a Maverick, somebody says she asked me to get hot Cheetos.
Yep. 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 I
uh,
do. And he gets them.
that's a good man right there.
He
Um,
sure is.
so I talk, and I'm having to find a different way to do it because talk's not always having the results that I want. And I don't mean just I talk to people, which I do, but then I go and I tell the story because that's how I process it in my brain. And I'm finding not everything is fully processed out when I tell my wife the story. And it causes problems at home. See if you've dealt with this one where I'm coming home and it builds up over time, but it gets to the point where all I'm telling is the negative stories from work. Man, this happened today. And because still trying to process, I'm trying to get, like, our conversations is we talk about something to find a solution. I'm trying to get past the anger, and I wasn't. Do you have that issue at home where you brought home frustrations and you go, okay, I need to change something here because now it's that bleed over? Because there's no separation. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's no real separation of work and life and relationships and employees and this and that and the other. So you have to minimize the negative bleed over. Have you had that negative effect in your life and hot Cheetos weren't working and you figured out you had to do something a little bit different to separate it?
Absolutely. I mean, um, like I was talking about earlier. I mean, I basically work 24 hours, 7 days a week since I've been able to work. Um, so of course that bled over when Maverick and I got married, and then a couple years later we had Logan. You know, the main part that we had issues with was me being gone all the time for work. Um, we didn't really have as much like you're talking about, like talking about people, like the negative effects of the people coming to you or whatever. We had more of the me being gone, and um, he wants me here, and I want to be here, and I can't be here because I have to be at work, and that was our main issue, and probably our only issue, honestly.
So how did you, obviously there's been ups and downs of time and work, but how did you approach that that conversation on a personal level. Did you start it or did Maverick start it?
Well, Maverick started it, and at that time, this was years ago. At that time, we were paying off all our debt, so we just did what we had to do. But there just came a point to where it was just like, you got to be on some, and you might need to change jobs to do that. And so
I mean, 7 days a
ultimately,
week. How many hours a day were you saying?
I worked at least 72 hours a week, if not more.
Gee whiz.
Yeah, and
10
and
10-hour
Maverick
days.
Maverick is a very patient person, so for him to come to me and say I need to be home more is hard for him to do because he's not that confrontational type with me. He's that way with his coworkers or with his employees, but not with me. And so he told me that I probably needed to change jobs, and that's what I ultimately did. And I came here, and it's been the best decision for us.
Yeah, yeah. Life has to change. I've told many a story on the air about building networks with podcasting and digital media, and trying to. At the time, I was really trying to build my digital media empire, but I was doing it in a very wrong fashion. And I'm not putting words in Maverick's mouth or your mouth, but I'm going to say from the outside, working 7 days a week, 10-hour days is the wrong way to go about life. Why are you even married?
Yeah,
It's like you're barely roommates at that point.
yeah,
And now,
yeah.
see, there's a flip side to every statement, every coin. The flip side of that, well, if it's temporary, if you were talking about focusing on paying off
Hmm.
debt, do you time frames matter and goals matter, and you can do anything for a short period of time. And that was something my wife and I also had to work
Hmm.
through. But I was doing things the wrong way, spending way too much time and energy focused on other people and doing things for them that they wouldn't even do for themselves. And my wife
Right.
finally said, pick one. You're
Yeah.
being successful, but you're also doing a whole lot of wrong things. Instead of doing 10 things at once, you get to pick one. Well, not you get to. We were fighting, and I said, and in a real heart, in a real moment, I said, what do you want? I want to fix this. This is more important than anything else. And she
Right.
said, pick one. And I did. And it
Right.
actually made me more successful and built my home life up much better, which is important because
Hmm.
why? Why are you even married if you're not going to be there with that person? I've seen it too
Exactly.
many times in EMS of that.
Yep.
Now, let's talk about that topic. We both have had issues with it. We've both stayed on our first marriages. I don't know about Maverick, but I still introduce my wife sometimes as my first wife of 20 years. I, I don't know why. I find that hilarious. She finds it okay, funny. She doesn't hate it, but it is dumb. But
He
we've
would
managed.
definitely say something like that.
Yeah, we did. Well, there you go, Maverick. You can start using it now. But both of us, you and I, we've definitely navigated the waters of marriage and EMS in a busy life. And I mean, you're still young, and you got together young, and you got married young, and you made it work. That's its own tough road, right? I don't know about you, but I've watched too many marriages fall apart in EMS because of that. Well, if I have to pay the bills, I got to work 48 hours in a row. I got to work
Hmm.
all the time. And then it
Hmm.
becomes that fight. I remember one partner. Well, I'll tell two partner stories. And because leadership sometimes is through stories, it's through, Jesus did it in parables, right? Not everything in the Bible is literal. There are some things that were just stories that were to illustrate other things. That's how we learn. So I'm going to tell you two stories. And at some point, Jessica and I will get smooth here because I'm going to have you on more times because these conversations that she and I have on the phones, I'm like, man, this needed to be recorded. This honest
Hmm.
conversation will get there. And we're going to bring more of that here to One EMS. But here's the first story. I was with a partner, and he worked a full-time heavy duty 911 job where he was a captain or commander or something, and just constantly having to manage people and invest in people there. And then he would come to the job that he worked with me for 24 hours, and then he'd go home for 24 hours unless there was overtime that he filled in one of the two companies, you know.
Right.
And he made at that time, I want to say about $80,000 a year between the two jobs, and couldn't afford to pay his bills. And he's always complaining that his wife was spending money and she's always trying to get him to do stuff for the kids and we can't afford it. And I remember even at that time being ignorant, not having even started Dave Ramsey, and I was financially ignorant. I really was. And I went, that doesn't, somehow that line doesn't connect to that line. You're making, I was making, I think 20,000 a year. My wife was making about the same. So we were barely making it on less than 40, or actually she might not even been working. I can't remember. And I was like, well, we're barely making it, but I'm barely making money. You're making 3 to 4 times what I'm making and you can't pay your bills. What do you take from that? You can either be hopeless
Yeah.
or like something's wrong here. You know, I mean, their marriage fell apart. And I watched another one where he was never home. He worked fire full time, volunteered for fire in the county we worked in, and then worked basically with my company or the company I worked with full time. And then
And
his wife.
that's the trap we all fall into. I think we all have fallen into it
How
at
do you
some
avoid?
point.
How do you change that, Jessica? How did you change
It's
it? But Maverick's like, no
well,
more Cheetos until you quit your job. I mean,
no,
what? How did you
it's
change
well,
that?
it's my family is more important to me than work. And so if you can't get out of me what you need me for, 40, 50, even 60 hours a week, and it's got to be 72, it's got to be 100, whatever, then obviously I'm never going to do enough for you. So that's kind of the conclusion I made. And, my family is more important to me than working 100 hours a week.
So, have you always stuck to that since you figured that out in your life? Was it just an easy path? Oh, I realized it, and now everything's better, and I've always stuck to that path.
No, obviously what we're doing right now with the new division, I mean, it's making me work more. But I've already talked with Maverick about it, and he knows. And these are the steps that I'm taking to not do that anymore. But for right now, this is what I have to do. And he supports me 100%. And this is I can do anything for a short time, but I'm not willing to do it for a long time.
And there you go. That is a difference, because that is the truth. And coming back to the motivational leadership, and I always love where conversations go. For me, conversations are just natural. We go wherever it takes us. There's no preset questions. Typically, there's no guidelines. Last week with Laverne, we started off, what do you look like in EMS? And we talked about a bunch of different things and still kind of stayed in that playground. And here, I thought we'd be talking more about what motivates us. But I like where we're going. And that's the truth, is getting better takes time. Brian, every time, and it's something that he's made a mantra of his own. I can tell by the way he says it. But when he's around and somebody says something about weight loss, like, yeah, I'm working on weight loss, and it's almost like a trigger. He says, well, you didn't put it on overnight. It took a long time to put on the weight. It's going to take a long time to take it off. And
Right.
by no means does he need to lose weight, but maybe at some point he did. Or maybe somehow that just translated differently, but it's a mantra that he really internalized, and that's different, right? When we memorize something, that can help. I at one point made a priority list, and that was probably after or right about the time my wife said pick one in digital media, and I did. But I said, okay, my priority is family first. And man, that is such a trap of a phrase that we can get into, possibly. But family first, and then my digital media, because it made me super happy, and then work was third. But work supported the other two, because without the money,
Right.
I can't take care of my family and be there for them. And without the digital media, I couldn't be happy and be around my family. And without the money, I couldn't support digital media. And without, blah, blah, it's just a cycle. So I've really actually built more of a wheel thing in my mind. But that didn't always stay true. I found myself doing jobs that took me far away from digital media. And my wife would have to say to me, I thought you said you wanted this career, this life, this vision, and you've seen, and she'd always remind me of the success I have seen doing that. And how much happier I was.
Yeah.
So when you change something, when you decide I've got to pull off of 7 days a week, 10-hour days, my family is more important to me. Sometimes it's easy to fall into that trap. I'm going to bring up another one for us to talk about, Jessica, along the same line. Early on, the need was you and Jason worked we called it the Royston schedule, but you had 4 salaried people up there running 2 trucks. And for the most part, you balance between 5 days one week and 6 days the next week or something like that, and shorter trucks and whatever. There was some kind of balance and flow there. And I was bringing you and Jason into management, and you were showing that you could do more. And we were having conversations about getting off the truck because I knew where my path was, and I knew what my goal always was. My goal is never get back on the truck. It was my
Yeah.
goal was to build up something and opportunities for other people to have a better way to do what they want to do on the truck. But you and Jason went, no, we love the truck. We feel it's important. We're going to stay here. I'm like, it's going to have to change, but it doesn't have to change today. And it would have been easy for me to go, you know what, you're right. And it'd have been easier for you to go, oh, I see that I'm making more progress in this company. I was trying to find that Tony Robbins phrase there. Progress, according to Tony Robbins, makes us feel fulfilled. It makes us feel like we matter, like life is important. And you were progressing with that schedule you had there. I just been on the trucks. You are now progressing, moving up, being recognized, because you can tell the stories yourself of why you left other companies. But I know one of them is clearly you didn't feel like you were making progress or feel appreciated. You're just being used. And that is the difference between working 7 days a week and being used. You're burned out. Your husband wants you home. Your kid doesn't know who you are anymore. Those kind of things, to working 7 days a week, making progress in your own way, which means you're able to work that family time in. And it's not going to be traditional 9 to 5 and we're home on these set times. I have every weekend off. But if we find that way to flow through our life, how did you find that when you started shifting? Because you came to me obviously after you and Maverick had this conversation, and yeah, I had that conversation again. You got to come off the truck. You can't. And then what happened? We grew a division that you got passionate about, and now you're on the truck more, almost as much as you're not on the truck. Describe that up and down and how you went through that path.
Well, coming here from another place where I was working, I mean, honestly, it would be 18-hour days. To come in here where I was more on a set schedule, but I was still working a lot of days. But it still provided a way for me to be home with my family from 5 p.m. to whenever we went to bed. So I was okay with that. I was in that routine. I'm a very routine person. I'm a very OCD person. So I like routine and I thrive on it. So when you came to me and said, "Hey, Jessica, I think you should get off the truck," it was just, what are you talking about? You're going to mess up my routine. I need to work, at least 3 days a week on the truck just to have some sense of stability, because I wasn't sure what coming off the truck meant as far as what I would be doing, and would it be stable, and would it be, something that I could put into a routine. And so, but I had to take that leap of faith and do it, and I did. And basically what it's grown is this new division and ways that I can still be on the truck for right now as I still transition, but also do something bigger and better than just being on that scheduled truck 3 days a week. And so, like I told you earlier, me and Maverick had that conversation. He's fine with it as long as I am moving toward not being on it for the rest of my life.
That's it, right? I believe for me, and I think it really should be for everybody, your goal should be to have the theoretical, all the money you ever need in the world, what would you do? You need to, that should be a goal. It should be, what do I want to do versus what do I have to do? And if you can be fortunate and make that the same thing, that's great. It's very clear to me, Jessica, you don't ever, well, not ever, but you have no goals to be out of EMS. You have goals to manage EMS the way you want to do EMS and to do things you love in EMS.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to be out of the service of EMS and to do this all the time, right? Which would, some people say,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's not EMS anymore. Okay, I'm not going to argue that, but I can still make a world for you. I can still bridge gaps where you might not relate to Tony Robbins, but I can bridge that gap between where I can relate to Tony Robbins and I can relate to you because I did this for 20 years. I was
Right.
in the field. I met my wife through EMS. We just celebrated 21 years of marriage,
That's
you know?
awesome.
So,
Congratulations.
uh, you're welcome. I don't know why. I don't know what the, I was thinking about the next thing I was going to say. You threw me off and just, you're welcome. That was the dumbest thing ever said. What? That is just, I don't even know where that came from. I think I was going to try to make some other joke. Somehow it just did not work.
It just didn't work. It's all right.
Yeah.
It's
I
all
don't even
right.
know what that phrase was. But that's our life, right? Is sometimes things happen. I'm writing down things, routines versus ruts. You
Yeah.
talked about having to need that routine, and you're right. Not everybody is cut out to be me. Not everybody's cut out to be this guy who will spend all day and all night hawking and exhaust himself. I run the digital media track at DragonCon, and everybody's, oh, that's amazing. It's not. It's
Yeah.
super busy and it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And for 5 days, it is 18, 20-hour days. And I love every second of it. But I am so exhausted. And the more I do it, and with other things in life. Like when I started it, I was on a hustle. So I could easily just go, oh, I'm going to take a few days off and just sleep and not do anything after. And that was
Right.
fine. But now I'm running running 2 or 3, 4 companies now. Um, some are busier and more profitable than others. And the ambulance company takes a lot of attention and time.
Mm-hmm.
And last year I did DragonCon, and those days, and I was able to back off a little bit. See, you can't always run 20-hour days. And if my DragonCon is always going to be 5 days of 20 hours or 6 days of 20 hours days, ultimately it's going to burn me out. Right. So I was
Right.
able to, people help me. You listen to the people around you. My whole point is last year when I came back from it, I still took a day or two to try to recoup. It still took me the better part of a month to not feel exhausted off
Yeah.
of that, because I was going right back into running this company I was very deep into being on the trucks and having to handle stuff then too, all that stuff. So at some point I want to talk about routine of this is how we do it versus that rut of, oh my God, I'm burned out and I'm exhausted. I don't need anything else. But no, not everybody's built to be what I do. I'm not built to be a kindergarten teacher. I'd be
Yeah.
punting little
Yeah.
Logans all over the place. Like, sorry,
Yeah.
Logan, no, your mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah.
Yep. Yep.
I just get frustrated, right? But great kindergarten teachers are born to be that. Great EMTs, and I've met a number of them. Andy is a great EMT. He openly says, I don't want management. I don't want leadership. I'm here to help, and I'll do something if it can help, but I never want to be that chief. Cool, because you're a great EMT. And I know that when you show up on scene, you're going to do a great job. We need people like that in this world. We need great people. There are managers of fast food that make the fast food great, and they're only managers because they never wanted to move beyond that, because they only took the management job to do. I want you to put in the words what it is that drives you, and I'm going to give you a roundabout way to get to it so you can help me get the words. But there are those of us in life who are driven to do the best job possible, and sometimes that means stepping away from being that shift supervisor where you're still in the mix and make expediting the food and this and that and the other, and making sure Sally takes her break and making sure the customer gets their thing, and you actually have to step up and do more because you're making opportunities. But there is a difference between going to where I want to go running companies and doing shift work. What words do you use to say you're driven to do the best job you can in the position you are, and you're content with that? I guess maybe I
Well,
just said it. I don't know.
I mean, all I can do is what I feel is right, and what I would want from somebody else to be for me. So I always try to have the example and go by the example of I want to be the leader that I never
Mm,
had. And so that is ultimately what hang on, I need to.
She's trying not to die on air. That's what she's
Yeah.
doing.
So that's ultimately what I try to go by. When you asked me earlier about how I deal with, certain people and how I, de-escalate some things, that's how I try to look at it is what would I have wanted my leader to say to me, 8
Mm,
years ago, or just even recently, 3, 4 years ago, what would I wanted them to say to me instead of what they ended up saying? And so
nice.
that's what I try to go by and how I try to lead, and that's ultimately what drives me.
There definitely seems to be a different mindset that people can take in jobs in life. Well, it was done to me, so therefore I do it to you. Right. I
Mhm.
hate the phrase pay your dues because it's
Yeah.
typically used negatively. It's like, well, I had to do all this crap and I had to get hazed and I had to
Mhm.
do it was still wrong when you had to do it
Yeah.
when it was done to you, man.
Yep.
There's something fun. I'll give you there's something funny about getting the rookie to go out and rewind the federal cue on the thing or for the next call. Otherwise, it won't be ready. That's a prank, right?
Yeah.
But to say, well, you've got to check all the calls where somebody's peed on themselves because, when I was young, my medic made me do that. It's like
Mhm.
there's a passing on negativity, but there's something about earning your spot. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the keys that you and I really work on is changing our words because changing how you say it changes the feeling of it and the motivation of it, the drive of it.
I
And
definitely have worked with I've definitely worked with some great medics. My short time, I've definitely worked with some great EMTs, whether it be here, there, county, wherever. I've worked with great people, and those people have also influenced me to be, you know, a certain way towards what ultimately now is my employees and my people, because they told me stories that was 30 years ago was happening, and 20 years ago, and 10 years ago, and so on and so forth, and this is impacted them negatively, and that is not the type of leader that I ever want to be and won't ever be.
got it. Yeah, that is exactly where motivational leadership comes from. We are motivated to be different instead of passing the buck and cussing somebody out or doing it the way we've done it for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
Is sometimes people do need to get yelled at because
Mhm.
that's just what they respond to. And that's something you have talked to me about multiple times, Jessica, about as I get more focused on what I'm doing, I have my way of things. Time is money. The only difference is I own it, right? That's the
Yeah.
pit bull line. Um,
Yep.
and I'm investing my time in new areas because I have people to help invest it in other areas like yourself. You can take more time and talk to somebody. Ginger can take more time to talk to somebody. And I still try to give time when I can to people, but we had two different conversations with somebody here recently where I was very hard line and coming at it from the motivation that I thought was needed and that I knew how to give at that point. You had a whole different conversation about the same topic with the same person where you brought it a different way and they were able to
Mhm.
resonate with that better. And that's what's needed in life. And if you
Mhm.
don't some of the frustrations I believe people have, and this is well, I'm gonna let you talk about this and we're gonna get out of here. Uh, when we deal with employees, it does seem like sometimes they just want us to fix all their problems. Oh well, my dog's pregnant. I'm trying to make it something that nobody's like, he's talking about me, because it's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make this general, but my dog's pregnant. I can't come into work tomorrow. I was like, what does that have to do with anything? You gotta,
Yeah.
oh my car broke down. I gotta be at work in 2 days. Like, well, then be at work in 2 days. You got time to
Yeah.
figure it out. You know,
Yeah.
um, it's
But also on that same line, if it were you saying, and your dog was pregnant and you just had to be off work, or something came up, and wouldn't you want somebody to say, hey, you know what, you don't do this often, of course, depending on who it is. Hey, you know what, you don't do this often, I got you. Just get back here when you can. Just come in next shift, whatever.
And
Or
that's,
is that too lenient for you?
and that is situational. And that's a great point that you bring up. And that's why, as in this scenario, I'm the COO of the company. Jessica technically works for me, but that's why I surround myself with people who aren't afraid to say things differently to me and phrase things directly in other ways, because it is situational. Because there are times you said something about, well, I would have done this. Yeah. And that's what we have to teach. You would have done it. I probably would have
Mm-hmm.
done it. Or, things happen. I didn't do it. Yes, I want forgiveness. I do want patience and leniency. We try to give grace and mercy, but it's situational. It depends on if you come to me and say, oh, I have to be off tomorrow, and I already have 3 holes on the schedule, and I'm trying to make everything right, and I've got, Brian needed me to do this, and this person needed me to do that. I might go, suck it up, Buttercup. You got to take care of this. And that might not be the right answer, because they really maybe aren't sharing everything that they need or how important it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw it last night with my kids. I quit a job that I was unhappy in for many reasons, but the straw that broke me was my grandmother died, and they were being kind of crappy about it. They
Mm-hmm.
It's fuzzy, because it's not one of the situations where I can go, oh, this is what I did wrong. I don't remember what I did wrong or was right. I just believed I was right there. It's clouded by emotions, but ultimately I just turned in my stuff and said, okay,
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to do. Because I made a decision in my life. I think it's what it comes back to. There's no easy answer to your question, Jessica. Is it too lenient? Maybe. Is it too hard? Maybe. But the reality is, let's say your dog's pregnant, or okay, I'm coming to you. My dog's pregnant. I have to make a decision what takes priority over the other thing, right? And I understand the dog pregnant thing is very silly and
Yeah.
not literal, but it's the best way to discuss this. Is I've got to make the decision of, is my dog being pregnant worth me going to find a new job, or am
And
I putting too much emphasis on something that maybe doesn't need that much emphasis, and I need to take care of my life better and work my job? And it's not that simple either, but that's the best words I can come up with.
I think that I try to look at it in a way of not just taking care of the person while they're on the job, or while, when we make our pay rates as good as we've made them. It's not just taking care of somebody like that, but it's taking care of somebody wholly, as an employee. Like, we care about you, we care about your family, we care about your pregnant dog, like, we do. I mean, we do.
Yeah.
And, you know, as we sit here and talk about how, we both have worked, our butts off for years and years and years and had to make a choice. I can't sit here and tell my people, like, hey, I don't care. You got to be here. If it's something that should be excusable, I can't sit here and say that
I
to
would,
them, which is
I
why I'm
would,
not in that position.
yeah, I would rephrase it. Of it, you feel like if it was something you can help with, you should help with it, and that's a
Yeah.
really good leadership mentality. And you have balanced it, and that's the thing. We can't, everything that comes out in these interviews and these talks, there's a whole lot of context and experience around it that even with Jessica and I is somewhat shared, that we don't bring out in the story here,
Hmm.
because there's a balance when we want to help somebody to what we need to do with the company. Because ultimately, and that was
Yeah.
a mindset that helped me change 100%, was my helping you, Jessica, is to make sure that this company runs to its best of its ability to make all the money we can make, so I can make sure your paycheck lands and your food is put on the table. That's how I'm helping you. So
Hmm.
sometimes that's where I got to be able to do some of the hard talks of, I've talked to an employee, and I'm going to use a whole different story
And
that
here's
has
the
nothing to do with
flip.
someplace. What's the
Here's
flip?
the
What's the
flip.
flip? What?
The flip is, you take care of me, I take care of you.
That should be the flip. Yes. Yes. We all support each other. We all work with each other. We take care of things. Before I get off into other stories and other questions, we're definitely going to come back at some point and talk about routine versus ruts. And we're talking about the danger of the phrase family first, because
Hmm.
that's going to be a whole show in itself. That can be a whole lot. Jessica said earlier, she only has personal stuff that she didn't necessarily want to put out for social media. So I'll just you know what? At some point, she might make a professional pay. She doesn't need it right now. But you can go to oneems.com and see all the other videos I've done on the interviews and find a lot of things going on there. Social media is We Are One EMS, all spelled out. I use my words like a big boy. And if you're one of those who doesn't, and I do mock you a little bit, but that's just where I come from. It's We Are One EMS. And it's all spelled out one word typically. Hashtag is We Are One EMS. You can find this across all social media. I do daily videos on TikTok about the EMS life, and I did a Would You Rather the other day. And you know what? I'm going to ask you that, Jessica. Would you rather be out in 100-degree heat with the sun beating down on you on the highway, not active, not trying to get somebody out of the car, not saving a life, but standing there while somebody else does all the work while you're waiting in full dress blues, the heaviest things you can wear, or turnout gear, whatever? Or would you rather be in the lightest, comfiest uniform that still makes you feel professional, being in the back of the air-conditioned ambulance, working on a patient, but you're guaranteed to get hit with body fluids?
How much body fluids?
I don't know, because everybody has their limits.
No. Okay. I would rather sweat all day.
Me too. I would rather
Fluids.
sweat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna today's TikTok is going to be a story time on how body fluids make me react, and I want to share that. But yeah, so I do that sometimes. I do other things, but check out the hashtag We Are One EMS or We Are One EMS across the board. I want to thank everybody for being here and participating. And Jessica, thank you for being on with me today.
Thank you for having me, Charles.
We'll do it again. It'll be fun.
All right. I look forward to it.